Good morning. Welcome to the OrangeNXT webinar series. This is already the third episode, and today we are going to talk about IoT, how to make IoT part of your customer journey. My name is Jeroen Donkers. I'm one of the managing directors of OrangeNXT, and today I have a co-host, Ivar Boom. Ivar, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ivar Boom. I've been working at Ampelmann for over 7.5 years now. And 3 years ago, we started this department of data services because we saw a huge opportunity using our data with our machines. And luckily, they were able to give us that. So that's
okay, thank you. Today we have quite a technical topic. IoT tends to be very technical. So let's kick off, jump into the technology, but as a warning up front, we don't want to be too technical today. We want to tell about the business value, most importantly. So let's start. Watch the technology. Yes, there we go. IoT, Internet of Things, that's what we are talking about today. And within OrangeNXT, and within these OrangeNXT series, we are talking about the topic digital transformation. In OrangeNXT we say we connect people, devices and data, where people is mobile, devices is IoT, and data is data and AI. So this is real new technology, innovation. But if you look at IoT, you could question, is this real innovation? On one side you can say no, because it's already around, I think, for 20 years or even more. What you can say is that IoT is innovating every day, because when I say IoT is there for 20 years, I mean that around 1999, it was the first time that the term Internet of Things was officially used. So you could say at that time started IoT. But the thing is that already, I think in 1988, there was a project at the university with Coca-Cola vending machines, where some programmers who did not want to go to the vending machine and see that their favorite beverage was sold out, they created a smart solution to see from a distance if their favorite drink was available. So actually, in 1988, you could say that was already some kind of an IoT. And from there, it was really let's say a lot of new technology, a lot of new innovation every year, where in the beginning, I think we can state that it was really about technology only. Connecting a device was really a challenge. Every device was different, communication was a challenge. We did not have internet and cloud as we do have it today, so it was really a challenge and a low level developing of technology. As a result, there were a lot of proof of concepts which did not move to the level of creating business value. So a lot of IoT projects did, and still do, stay in the level of proof of concept. And I think that's one of the important topics of today, and that's also the reason why the presentation is called How to Make IoT Part of the Customer Journey, is IoT has to move out of the technology perspective. So that's what I try to address today, and what I try to, let's say, explain by the storytelling that you can do, Ivar, with the project, which is a real project. It's not a theoretical thing, it's a real project, which is up and running every day. But before we jump into the practical details, I do want to have some theory on IoT. And first of all, I want to take a look at the challenges, because it's technology, it has a lot of challenges. So if I would ask you, Ivar, if you look back at your project, what was one of the main challenges that you faced, if you could mention one?
I think not the technology per se, because we are a technology company by heart. So I think that was something we thought we could overcome. I think more the support and the business value within the company. So luckily for us, we already had 1 or 2 members of the management team who were really supportive of IoT and taking on new innovation. And we definitely saw business value in our solution. So I will tell you a little bit more later on in the presentation.
Yeah. So it's good to hear that the biggest challenge you name is not technology, but is a business, let's say business adoption and business value. So if I would look, let's say, at the typical IoT challenges that we see in various IoT projects, we still have to mention the technology, because there are a lot of technologies. I would say in the past you would have to create and develop the technology. In this time, let's say of IoT, it's about manage a lot of technology. There is a lot of technology there. You have to manage it. And the biggest challenge there is that you have to create a mature data pipeline. You have devices that create data. How do you connect the device? How do you collect the data? How do you communicate the data? That is really, let's say, your starting point. Let's say like streaming water, like flowing electricity of your project. If the flow isn't there, all the rest of the project won't be there. So it will be very difficult to create business value. But and that's the third bullet point that I would like to mention, which is, let's say, the main message, I think, of this webinar. Creating business value always was a challenge and still is a challenge. And I think within the project, from moment number 1, you must have your focus on the question, what is the value that I'm creating for the business? And not about how cool is it that I can connect this device and have 1 million messages a second that I can compress and store, and we have to create business value. So that's a challenge. The challenge is what we, let's say, are facing in everyday project today and in the past. And I think it's also interesting, before we look in detail at projects, to look at some trends in IoT. I have picked some. I think there are multiple trends, so you can debate on which trend is the most important or the most valuable. I have picked 4, which I think are, let's say, having heavy impact on the type of project and the ability to create business value. So the first trend is what I call cloud to cloud. What do I mean with that? Let's say in the early days of IoT, you started with connecting a device one by one. You had to invent how to, let's say, connect a device to your machine, to your environment, how to collect the data, and how to communicate the data. At this moment, you see that where cloud is, let's say, there, I think for many years right now, also manufacturers of all kinds of devices, they include their solution already with a cloud solution. So they manage that the devices they sell, the sensors they sell, the telemetry they enable is already connected to the cloud. And that changes the role for, let's say, an IoT project that you execute, because in this case, you no longer face towards connecting the devices, but you face connecting another cloud environment to your cloud environment, which is, on average, I think, less complex than connecting every device every time, again and again and again. If we have the cloud, we also have everything outside the cloud, which is typically the location where the devices are at. The devices traditionally send lots of data to the cloud, and because we have huge bandwidth, we think, we have huge resources in the cloud, we think the initial setup always was send data and let the cloud do the rest. We are coming back from that thought, because I think in some cases we experience that we cannot send the amount of data we want to send. Maybe we cannot send it, and maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe we can do some pre-processing on the side of the devices. And that's what we call the edge. So intelligent use of resources and pre-processing at the edge of the cloud. Security. I think this is a word which in a lot of projects, in a lot of IoT projects and in a lot of IT projects is written somewhere in the last chapters as a closing note. But that is changing because it has to be, let's say, in one of the first chapters, maybe in the pre-phase. Because especially in IoT, you can, let's say, have the best security on your applications that you can think of. The weakest link is the connection from your device towards the cloud to your system. So it's very important that you safeguard that connection. Well, here you get help from a lot of cloud providers, which have a lot of plumbing available to do this good right from the start. And the last thing I want to mention, and I think I can put this bullet, I have put it on my trends in IoT for the past 5 years, and I will put it on for the next 5 years, is AI, artificial intelligence, the right way. We know we are, let's say, enabling a lot of data. We are collecting a lot of data, and we all start this project by creating the value that we want to do smart stuff in it. At the moment, I think we are still at the level that we are, let's say, quite good if we can collect, visualize, and report on the data and take, let's say, manual decisions based on dashboards, which is good for now because it creates value. But the added value lies in the fact that AI algorithms can find structures, can find relations that we cannot find as a human into the dashboard. And for example, you might think about predictive maintenance, which algorithms find, let's say, better plans for service instead of your standard service plans. I know that in your part of the presentation, Ivar, you are going to show us the business values and the reporting of it. Can you already give us a teaser? Not let's say explaining everything, because we will do that in a couple of sheets. But
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so like you said, AI, that's something for us as well for the near future. Right now we are more in a descriptive phase of our company. So right now we have IoT implemented for over 2.5 years now, but we are still in that same phase. So we gather a lot of data, and right now we just look at the data and see what happens, and that already creates business value. So we use that for internal reporting. So for instance, our maintenance teams and operational teams to see what the conditions of our systems are. But also on the other hand, we use it for external clients to show the added value of Ampelmann. So that's where we are right now. And yeah, of course, AI is something we will look into in the future at the moment when we learn more and more of our data.
I think we also have to be honest here that AI, let's say, is a very generic term, which is also there for a lot of years at the moment. But the AI algorithms in the past maybe were not that good. They promised a lot, but maybe were not capable to deliver. And I think at this moment we are really seeing a big change in AI algorithms that come from cloud systems. So the ability to leverage on those algorithms will be better and better. So I think this is, and therefore I still think this is a trend that you can pick up, I think this year, next year, and in the next year. Enough about trends. So let's try to take a look at a generic IoT landscape, because if you are starting your IoT project, I think it's good to have a big picture about what you are jumping into at the kickoff of such a project. And in general, I think an IoT project, you can make very complex landscapes, but in general, I think this picture tells a lot, because on the left side, we have devices, machines, peripherals that we want to connect and measure. And we have different ways of connecting. So we have machines that can connect directly. If not, we can create a dedicated connector, or with a gateway, we can connect on a site different devices and then have one gateway to the cloud environment. And as discussed, maybe some devices already connect to a cloud system, so we have to connect to another third-party cloud. But then, let's say the party starts, because there is a lot to do in an IoT project. And in this sheet, I've tried to, let's say, to divide the topics of an IoT project in 4 main categories. So on the top and on the bottom side, you see stuff that's related to infrastructure. So you have to have a secure infrastructure. It has to be high available. And high available, I mean, if there is, let's say, a disconnect, if your data center is down, you still have the ability to move forward. So you have to have 2 data centers, etc. So infrastructure has to be done the right way. Then the first column, where you see, let's say, our solution logo connects. I think it's the low-level column where all the data comes in. You have to handle protocols, data volume, smart storage stuff, etc. So that's still a little bit technical. Then we move to the second part of the functionality that's in the cloud, and that's already more functional. But still, it's, I would say, organizational. Functional. So it's where you can do configuration, where you can create hierarchies of your installations, of your devices, where you can set up the data that you want to monitor, where you can set up the highs and the lows that you want to alert on, etc. But still, it's in preparation for, let's say, what actually is important, and that's the last part. Those are, let's say, the business functionalities. You want to have monitoring, you want to have active reporting, you want to have alerts, you want to be able to create service plan, and you want to do it in a very visualized way. It doesn't make any sense to show 1 million messages popping up your screen. You cannot process it, you have to do it very visual. So an IoT landscape typically, from left to right, goes from very technical to very business. And the challenge is, for every project, how can you move as fast as possible from left to the right to create business value? I think in the next part of the discussion we'll see how we can do it, but to explain already a little bit, I think you have to use building blocks to kickstart your project, and I think you don't have to do, let's say, the full feature set in order to go to the right side. So now's the time where we jump into business examples. So I want to show 2 business examples. I will do that on a very high level, and then I will hand over to Ivar, which will take us into a deep dive of the Ampelmann project. So what can you do with IoT? An example, we could have a retailer that's handling parcel services. So you have to collect and you have to hand out parcels. And typically you do that with a scale, with a computer to do that. If that scale is out of order, the business at that point is standing still, it's 0. So you have to have a high availability. With an existing project, we were able to monitor connected scales, about 4,000 connected scales, and to have an early warning system on when they were malfunctioning. And we had a high alert on service engineers that were in the field, which were working mobile and had a mobile app as well. So we could have a very early visit on site of a machine that was not working. And because we had the service engineer and the mobile app connected to the same cloud, there was a very high first-time resolution possible because he could do all the checks before he was leaving. Also, the rollout of this company, the rollout, let's say, speed of new devices was significantly higher than before, because in the standard situation they could do about 50 scales rollout in a week, and now, because they can prepare and configure remote, they could do 100. So they were able to do 100% more in a week. Another example, which is of a company of heating and cooling, they decided to add IoT to their devices from the factory. So they were delivering devices that were connected to our IoT cloud, let's say by design and by delivery. And that enabled them to create a complete new kind of service to their customers. And that's what I mentioned, connect your customer with IoT, is they now are able to offer comfort as a service because they can instant remote and optimize your heating and cooling system. Of course, they also can have a first alert on errors that are popping up. But the most important part of this project was that there was a complete new business service, comfort as a service. And it was not possible to try, let's say, to dare to offer this service if these devices were not connected to an IoT cloud and monitored in a proactive way. So I would say that's enough talking from my side for this moment. I would like ask Ivar to tell about the project. We named it Becoming the #1 Digital Offshore Access Provider. And I think everybody will be very curious to know what it is and how you do it. So
definitely.
Tell us.
Yeah, it's a bold statement, but I believe that as a company we need that to grow. So I'll tell you later on. First, introduction of Ampelmann. Company was started in 2008 by our current CEO, Jan van den Tempel, and he's also the inventor of this machine, which you see on the right-hand side of the slide. And the story goes that back then, in 2008, he was a PhD student in Delft, and he went to a convention in Berlin, and there was a convention about renewable energies, about wind turbine foundations. And there were also some talks about how you access these wind turbines. Usually you take a CTV boat or a helicopter, but he thought he could do it a lot smarter and a lot safer as well. So in Delft, you also have nearby the PhD section, you have a flight based on a flat surface. But he thought, like, why not move it around? So you put it on a vessel which has a motion because of the waves. You put 6 cylinders on top of it, and the top side will remain flat. Put a gangway on top of it, like you see on the slide, and you can actually you can transfer people from a vessel to a turbine. So that's actually how it started.
So it's a flight simulator upside down.
Upside down, yeah. And then the company name, is a funny anecdote, is because it was in Berlin, you have the traffic lights with the puppet. It was called the Ampelmann. And he needed a code name for it. So that's why he named it Ampelmann. And he thought people crossing from a vessel to a platform should be as easy as crossing the street. So hence where the name is coming from. It's good to mention that we are the first one to start this industry. This industry is called the walk to work industry. I will name it a few more times. Yeah. So important to understand. And flash forward to today, we have 11 offices worldwide in Americas, Middle East, Europe, and Asia. And we work also in very remote places. And that's important to understand for the business case. So we work in West Africa, sometimes in Siberia and Asia as well. Worked on over 300 projects, and we transferred already 6.5 million people. So.
And I see a lot of project locations on the map which are not on land. So you have really all over the world, all over the...
Yeah, and especially because we work at sea, connectivity for us is a challenge. And that's also a part of the challenge we face in IoT. But I will tell you later on a bit. So, like I said earlier, it's a safety machine, but it's really important to understand why clients want to use Ampelmann, because it also relates to the business case for IoT. Yeah. So in short, we work for the big oil and gas majors like BP or Shell, but also for a lot of wind turbine manufacturers like Siemens or Dom Energy. And these clients have a lot of assets offshore. And sometimes they need to construct an asset, and sometimes they need to maintain one. And usually these projects last weeks, months, or maybe even years. And they have to put people on these platforms. Well, they can use helicopters or boats, but they also can use an Ampelmann system. Why would they use it? Because it's safe, but next to that, we can guarantee a high uptime. And it's important to understand what uptime is. It means the amount of time, or the percentage of time we can actually transfer people from a vessel to a platform. And our track record says that we have 95 to 98% uptime, which is really, really high. Definitely compared to when you see helicopters.
What do they do typically?
Around 60–70% of the time. Okay. So in the moment, and it's very difficult to plan these, because when you have a little bit of fog, you don't fly anymore. Okay. So the thing is, we can shorten the amount of work that has been done on the platform, the amount of days that is needed. We can shorten that drastically. and that saves them a lot of money. So it's very important that the system is working offshore.
So that's funny. So one of the, let's say, goals of an IoT project, creating more uptime or availability, you also already do that by, let's say, delivering this gangway product.
Definitely, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So why IoT? So before we had the IoT infrastructure, these machines are pretty expensive. And you can imagine that if there is a downtime or an issue with it, back then we definitely had to call the vessel, or we had to WhatsApp and have an understanding what the issue was. But that's not a lot of control, so you don't have much impact on that part. So we want to gain back that control, so that's one of the reasons why we want to have IoT. Second part is, well, I told you earlier, the uptime is very important. So we need to prevent downtime. On the Ampelmann system, there are around 500 sensors which we log, and it would be great if we could have that right at our display, so our engineers can look at it and prevent downtime. And I think the third one is also an additional service we have towards our clients, because before we couldn't do that, and right now we can show the data towards our clients and see, hey, how well is the Ampelmann system performing, or what are the parameters I can use to increase our efficiency in the operation.
Did you do this, let's say, deliver this kind of data and services before, or is it, let's say, extra, or is it improved? How?
Improved. So we did do some reporting, but you see in the offshore that they still work a lot with Word and Excel files, and people offshore.
Like in many companies.
Like many companies, but they just put it in manually.
Yeah.
But this is subjective data, and we want to be the party within the offshore that's more transparent, but also using more objective data.
Are you able, maybe answer that at the end of the project story, but are you able to, let's say, to explain to customers that because of this technology, you are, let's say, delivering insights which, let's say, nobody or no other company is able to deliver?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, we started this industry, but right now we have a lot of competition. But we want to remain market leader,
okay.
And therefore we need to show them these kind of insights, because there's a lot of money involved, and like, you know, the oil price is going way down. Offshore is having a hard time,
yeah.
Also in the wind industry. So we need to show them why we are still the best in the industry.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, showing this picture, these are the projects we've done in the North Sea, but we've done also a lot in other areas with less connection. This is the biggest challenge for us, so having a good connection offshore. And you have to understand, we are an Ampelmann system placed on a vessel, and we use the satellite internet connection of the vessel. So there's a dependency on that. And the quality of it varies per client, but also per region. You can imagine that in Europe it's pretty okay, but the moment you go to other remote places like Siberia or Asia, it's difficult. So on the one hand, we have a machine logging with 500 sensors, logging a lot of data, and on the other hand, we have a very bad connection. So in between, to make sure we can send out the data we want to, we need a good platform. And that's where we came up with the current solution we now have. So together with OrangeNXT, we created a platform where we have 3 types of data flows.
Yeah.
So the first one we have is, we have a Connect platform, which you saw in the earlier slides. Our engineers can log into there and they can request data on demand. So for instance, when a cylinder is broken, we can send, hey, give me some information about the cylinder between these times. The second part is we send out a summary of all the telemetry data after every operation. We need that data to show to our clients, hey, how well is your system performing? And the third part is that because of the bad connection, we can only send out parts. So we are also using that edge trend, like you were saying in the beginning of the presentation. But in the end, we want to have all the data. So in that part, we use a cold swap. We log all the data on.
Cool to hear in an IoT project that you really do, let's say, a cold swap of data. So
yeah, it's funny in the IoT project that we need the IoT solution for the data to be available right now, but only parts of it. But we also need a cold swap. So we log and store all the data on SSD drives. Every 6 months, we swap them out, and we upload the data into the cloud.
Yeah, so you really split, let's say, in the data that's operational, needed now, and you maximize that through the connection you have. Everything that's not possible, you do collect, but you, let's say, physically move it afterwards. and still be able to do the, let's say, the big data analysis.
Yeah, that's how we.
For me, this really was an eye opener, because in most of the projects you would say that it's easier to collect data. So I think if a project, let's say, is challenging data collection and connection issues, it would be a very good idea to talk to you and your company to see how your solution looks like.
Yeah, I think you need to be flexible. So that's what really helped during the implementation, is that we are not a standard company. And we already told that up front at the beginning, and we need a different kind of solution because we have this issue offshore.
Nice.
Yeah, here you see a screenshot of the first data flow I just mentioned. So this is the OrangeNXT or OrangeNXT platform. So our engineers can log into this. They can request what type of system they want to reach out to, and they can say, all right, give me some information about cylinders, oil pressure, etc. And the moment we have a connection,
these are engineers that are, let's say, at the offices or at the vessel.
At the offices. So we have a main office in Delft, but also some other offices worldwide, and they can access this. And the moment there is an issue with the system, they can download the data.
Okay.
But we will also use this during the design phase.
Yep.
Yeah, so about reporting, well, you asked that already in the beginning of the webinar. We use the telemetry data to send it to our data warehouse. And we use that internal reporting for instance, for maintenance, for asset engineers. So they track, for instance, how many times did the cylinder stroke run out, or how many times did the Ampelmann system work on a certain sea conditions. And that way we can use that information to schedule our maintenance as well. So we can schedule in between jobs, but to make sure that the chances of a downtime during operation is very low.
Did this bring, let's say, new insights which were completely new also to the Ampelmann people, which were eye-openers?
Yeah, definitely. So, for instance, we saw that in certain type of sea conditions, so the North Sea behaves differently than compared to Asia, and we saw that systems over there were having a hard time due to the waves, and they would have a heavier wear and tear, so we needed to replace them sooner. And now we have that knowledge and see, hey, okay, let's change our preventive maintenance program and see how we can do that.
Yeah, cool.
And then on the to continue the external part, I think that is very important in terms of business value as well. So last year we built a portal called Ampelmann Insights, and it's directly connected to our ERP program, but also our data warehouse and our sensor data. And this is where we show customers and clients how well we are performing and where we can improve. And that's something we really need in order to distinguish ourselves from competition.
Yeah, I don't understand the data I'm looking at, but it really looks, let's say, very interesting and useful, some kind of a business gold.
Yeah.
So, and if your customer think the same, I think that's this what you show here, Ampelmann Insights, I think is the example of how to make IoT part of your customer journey, because on the left side, let's say that's your customer journey, and on the right side you have your customer's journey.
Yeah, and you also see that clients are also behaving differently now. They see these kind of opportunities. So right now we are logging all the data from the Ampelmann. We get more and more information from the vessel itself as well. So they're saying to us, can we actually connect our data with your data?
Yeah.
And can we combine that? So we are in the phase right now to see and discover where do we see the added value.
More data, more swaps. Okay.
Yeah, this was
at the moment. Good.
Yeah, this is a summary of what we see right now, the business benefits. So, like I said earlier, we can now solve downtime much faster. We have an improved preventive maintenance program, and we use it in the engineering process. I think that speaks for itself. I think it's more important to emphasize the commercial part right now. So we have an Ampelmann portal, and for now it's free. So every client receives a free login.
Yeah.
Although that is kind of an investment from our side, but we believe that we can distinguish ourselves in that part.
Yeah.
But we will extend that portal in modularities. And we think with these extra modules, for instance, we would like to incorporate a forecasting model, so we can, with the data we have, we can predict when you need to transfer people, considering the vessel's response, but considering also the sea conditions and the weather forecast. And we would like to monetize that part, so that could generate for us an extra revenue stream.
Interesting.
And that wouldn't help without an IoT solution. And I think the second thing is improved service proposition. A few years ago, we still had the mindset of a production company. So we built an Ampelmann system and just said, hey, here it is, good luck with it. But because competition is rising, we see we need to change that mindset towards a service-minded company. So the client doesn't really care about what means of transport it is, as long as his people are on the platform. And we can provide it from the moment from tendering all the way to putting people on the platform. And with that, the IoT and the portal and all the data, I think that's a vital part within that proposition.
Is this also the feedback you get from your customers, that they are, let's say, recognizing the current added value that you are currently managing, maybe the future business values?
Yeah, because we constantly get the feedback that our service proposition is so much better than the rest. Of course, that has a price for it, so we are still looking into, right, what is the optimum between how expensive you are and what the service proposition is. Yeah. But we believe that this is necessary in order for the end client to have high uptime. So yeah, it's definitely the feedback we get.
And you're looking about future benefits. Are these benefits that you already taking a look into, or is it really, let's say, future steps, or how do you see them?
Yeah, so predictive. Okay, right now we're more of in the descriptive phase. So look at the data, what is happening, and act on that. But it's not really predictive. Yeah. But the challenge for us is to have the whole company along with this new technology. So we see that we, as a data department, we would like to go into that direction, but you also need the rest of the business to come with you. So that's a challenge I see as well with IoT. You can run with IoT, but the rest of the company needs to run with you. But we will take next steps into this. And with regards to optimization, that's already a thing we are working on right now. So before the Ampelmann system is even on the vessel or even in the field, we try to simulate the conditions over there. So we retrieve a lot of weather data, we retrieve the data from the Ampelmann vessel or a reference vessel, and we simulate the operation. So that's how we use that IoT solution.
Yeah, and the commercial, you say you become the #1 digital. Do you dare to state maybe that you already are, that you have to stay the commercial #1?
Well, maybe. I think compared to the competition, we are doing really well. It's just we want to be more than that. So
it's a broad.
It's a really broad topic. Yeah. So in the end, we would like to be the company that the big companies like Shell or Siemens coming towards us and saying, hey, I want a person A on somewhere in the world on a platform, provide me that. I don't care what kind of means, or is it even with an Ampelmann system or with some competition or with a helicopter, as long provide that whole service digitally as well. So become more of a planning tool in that sense. That's why we want to become the #1 digital access provider.
So let's follow up how that moves forward in the next years.
Definitely.
So I would thank you for explaining this IoT project at Ampelmann. I have to be honest that even myself have heard new stuff and learned about the Ampelmann name. I didn't know that. It's really funny to see how business names are created. So thank you again. That brings me towards, let's say, so we have to move to the end of the webinar, and I want to do that with some key takeaways. What is the most important part that I would like everybody to remember from this webinar, aside this beautiful project? I think we have mentioned that over and over. You have mentioned that, I have mentioned it. Try to focus on connecting customers, not devices. I think the project of Ampelmann is a perfect example of it. Try to be not to focus on technology. But at the same time, and that's the second part, it's difficult because it's a technical environment. But I think compared to the advantage from now compared to 10, 20 years ago, is that there are a lot of software as a service environments, like OrangeNXT, which can do a lot of plumbing of IoT. So a lot of stuff that you first have to invent and create, you now can, let's say, manage, which means that you can focus on the business value much earlier. And the last key takeaway, we did not mention it specifically, but it all has to do with the business value. Is I name it scale the right way. We want to create business value, and I see a lot of projects where we create new features, but we don't deploy, we don't roll out, we create new features. So we never come to the business value. Whereas if you would have a small feature, you could deploy that to many devices, you already create business value, and then you could do the second feature. And we have discussed this as preparation of this webinar. I know this is not a one-size-fits-all, because at Ampelmann you have not a lot of vessels, of the devices, but you do have a lot of sensors. So for you it would be the other way around, having a full feature data set and then deploy it to a single vessel, for example. So again, that's why it says scale the right way. That's not scale one size fits all, but you have to think about which type of scaling helps you to show your management and your customers the business value. And in a lot of projects, that's not being thought of upfront and not during the project, maybe only afterwards. So try to think that upfront. Last part would be some bonus material. I'm not going to dive deep into this because we are now only talking about IoT. And within OrangeNXT, we talk about people, devices, data. And we truly believe that if you add up multiple of these technologies, they can multiply or amplify the business value. So if you have a service engineer and you have assets, you also could add enterprise mobility to empower the service engineer to service the device that is IoT connected. And with AI, we already discussed descriptive AI and let's say real predictive AI. If we talk about visual inspections, which is also let's say a different expertise within OrangeNXT, you can do a lot of optimization there as well. So for everybody that has an IoT project in place and wants to amplify and multiply, I would say, take a look at enterprise mobility or artificial intelligence options to put on top of your current solution. So at this webinar series, we try to conclude with a quote. So I picked one from Winston Churchill. It says, "To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often." And I think this is quite nice because it's a pitfall of many projects that we try to do the change in one project, while it's much better to do small changes and do a lot of small changes. And then sometime maybe you get perfect or the situation has changed and you have to do, again, many changes. So I think this really fits this type of projects. That brings me to the last part where I have to introduce the next webinar. I would like to finish with one question to you. Is there any, let's say, lesson learned or thing up front? If there are people listening that want to kick off the IoT project, what would you give them as advice to do or to not?
Good question. I think the thing where I was really happy about is that we were, a lot of suppliers talk to you and they say, this is the solution, just take it. And I think from the beginning, we found a partner in this sense, OrangeNXT, who was really flexible and saying, all right, let's do it together. Because there's not a one-fit solution to all. So look at your situation and find a solution for that. So I think that was, for us, really a good point. And what should I do better is, I think the implementation went pretty smoothly. It's just that I think we should have thought about more, all right, when it's implemented, how will that change the business? I think we as a department, we are ready for it, but I think we could do better concerning the rest of the organization and how to use that IoT. So that's one thing you can remember.
I really recognize the last part. The first part I take as a compliment, thank you. And the last part, I really recognize that because everybody's focused on the project delivery.
Yeah.
But it's really important to have an idea about what then.
Yeah.
Because then you are live and now what? everything should be prepared there. So again, thank you for this very useful information that you have shared today.
Thank you.
This ends the webinar about how to make IoT part of your customer's journey. As a last point, I want to point out to the webinar, which is next week. I would say same time, same location, at least for the presenters, it's the same location. For you, it will be probably somewhere where you have a good connection, so not offshore, I guess. This presentation will be in Dutch, and it will be about, actually it will also be about IoT, but it will be specifically in an energy setup and how to do battery and energy management. Again, it will be in Dutch. It will be hosted by my colleague Heine van Wieren and René Oenema, and it will be co-hosted by Sylvana Level from KPN. So I'm really curious about that next week. Everybody can sign up for free. I think you can do it until a minute before 10 next week. And I think this is, let's say, hopefully for everybody, very useful information to take away, to take on the street and to consume and to use it in your own advantage. From my side, I would say thank you. Maybe till next time. And Ivar, thank you.
Thank you.
And see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Cheers.